He is Kangon, a good student and athlete, but due to an accident he ended up in the hospital, and after almost a year in a coma, he finally woke up. Yeon finds himself in a confusing scenario. Everything around him is destroyed, but despite that, he feels that someone else has been in the place. As he looks out one of the windows, he sees some dogs with an elderly woman and tries to ask for help. But he doesn't have the strength. It's been a long time since he last ate. He gets up and goes to the hospital kitchen to look for some food, while wondering what happened to the world, whether his family is still alive, or how long he has been asleep. Yeon begins to remember how he ended up there. He was cornered by a gang on the school rooftop. One of the boys was complaining about the scar he gave him, but Yeon just kept telling him that he ruined his own face. This angered them and they started beating him relentlessly until he fell from the top floor. We go back to the present, and Yeon sets out to find some help and to find his family, but the whole city is destroyed. Then he hears growling. It was the dogs from before, but they are calmed down by the elderly woman. Yeon tries to talk to her, but the woman gives him a bag and tells him to be careful, to stay alive, and to hide. After this, the elderly woman leaves, and Yeon opens the bag to find food and starts eating a little. Suddenly, a car appears and a boy is waving at him. Yeon tries to talk to him, but our protagonist ends up on the ground, and the thugs take his food, laughing at the fact that there are still naive people like him in this fragmented world. On the other hand, we see an unusual being in the room where Yeon was. Yeon wakes up after the blow, and the grandmother had taken him to her house to heal his wounds. He thanks her and asks if there was a war that caused the world to end like this. She honestly isn't sure and tells him that the world just plunged into chaos. Anyway, the grandmother tells him to go to the shelter and gives him some food. Yeon asks her why she doesn't come with him, and she tells him that her husband refuses to go because he thinks it's dangerous, and people no longer care about the elderly. Yeon thanks her and says he'll come back to repay the favor, but the grandmother responds that he already did and that humans are like seeds that grow to be fruitful. Yeon arrives at the shelter where there are many people. He goes to the girl who asks for his information to register him. Here we find out that he is 20 years old and that almost a year has passed since the accident. Anyway, it has been a few weeks since Yeon arrived at the shelter. Currently, he knows that society has completely collapsed, but despite that, it is slowly recovering, and the shelters are relatively safe. Despite this, no one knows how the world ended up like this. There are a few theories, such as America or an extremist group being the cause of it. But this old man tells us that the Earth was simply hit by an electromagnetic pulse that caused 34 hours of earthquakes worldwide. The most peculiar thing about all of this was that there were no casualties, and it is most likely that there was an alien attack. Yeon just smiles at this idea and goes to the girl from before to ask if there is any way to find out where his family is. She tells him that the only people she knows are those in the shelter, but not to worry because they must be in another base and safe. Then he receives a radio signal that apparently the delinquents from the school had been stealing food from other survivors. Yeon remembers the grandmother and decides to go get the elderly couple since the shelter is safer than the streets. He rides a bike, and when he arrives at the grandmother's house, he sees the old man driving away some delinquents. He tells them that people of value eat and drink to live, but people without value only live to eat and drink. So, he orders Ravashevsky, the dog, to attack them. Yeon stands still watching as they flee, while someone else watches him. On the other hand, at school, the former delinquents were talking to their boss, Seong-chun. He was eating while listening to the excuses they gave him about how the old man was dangerous, and that's why they couldn't get anything from him. Chun spat out his food and told the cook how terrible it was, asking if he knew the effort he had made to get the meat, that he should do better. After all, he and his gang fed and protected the school. Chun threw the tray away and grabbed a piece of meat, making the teacher swallow it. Then he returned to the guys from before, asking if they came back empty-handed, if they were the ones who said that old couple had a lot of food. The nervous guys replied that the situation was dangerous, that if he had been there, he would know. Chun stood up and approached them with a gun, asking if he should do their job, that they were a piece of shit for being so relaxed after giving that excuse, reminding them that the world is now a battlefield, that they were ashamed for not being able to take down a couple of old folks. Chun asks them to go back to the old couple and sends Jang Taesik with them, and please stop giving him more problems and do their job. On the other hand, Yeon and the old man were taking care of the grandmother. Yeon tells them to come with her to the shelter where they will be safer, but the old man is stubborn and refuses to leave the house. He says that people can only live by what they believe in, and he believes that reality is created by the mind. If we can change our mind, we can change our reality. The grandmother, fed up with the old man, tells him to shut up and go outside to put the car away. The old man tells her it's okay for her to rest and goes outside with the dogs. The grandmother tells Yeon that the old man is a good person, but he behaves like that because when they tried to evacuate at the beginning, he was often beaten and harassed, and now he tries to do everything on his own. Suddenly, noise is heard outside and Yeon looks out the window to see the earlier criminals returning. So, she goes outside to help the old man, who was throwing himself into the attack but is easily knocked down by Tisik. Miso and Ravashevsky also come out to attack, but they are stopped by the other criminals. Tisik tells the old man that if he hands over all his food, he will let him go, but then Yeon comes out and asks the grandfather if he is okay. Tisik remembers her and asks if she is Kang Yeon, and she also recognizes him and asks him to leave. Tisik tells her to stop talking nonsense, reminding her how he sent her to the hospital. Yeon asks how he can say that when he had 2 or 3 people helping him. The grandfather takes advantage of the distraction to attack, but he is knocked down with a kick. Tisik swears he will kill him if he tries to attack again. Yeon impulsively attacks him, but Tisik easily knocks her down and reminds her how ridiculous she looks now. The dogs also try to attack, but they are beaten by Tisik. The grandmother comes out to stop him, but she is just a hindrance. Yeon sees the grandmother faint and attacks Tisik, but he reminds her of her place and starts beating her brutally until she is unconscious. Meanwhile, the strange being from earlier appears nearby, watching everything. She is Youngrin, Yeon's childhood friend. As she approaches, she notices a wound on Yeon's face and asks if she got into another fight. But Yeon denies it and says she just ran into someone. In reality, she was fighting with the school gang. Rin tells her that her mom has been calling to ask about her school life, and that she should try to avoid serious trouble because she needs to live a correct life to get married someday. Yeon gets nervous at this, and Rin says she wants to go to her house to get the exam answers. Once they arrive at Yeon's house, Rin and Yeon's mother joke about how Rin is their future daughter-in-law. Rin then tells them she will be back in a moment and leaves some snacks in the refrigerator. They start studying alone, but Rin gets up and brings medicine to heal Yeon's wound, and reminds him that it would be better to stop fighting and not arrive at the wedding with injuries. After all, his body belongs to him. Yeon wakes up badly injured next to Miso and Ravashevsky. Meanwhile, the old man is taking care of the grandmother. In tears, he says that he needs to take her to the hospital, that all this happened because of his stubbornness. Unfortunately, Miso died and Ravashevsky is not breathing properly. Yeon enters the room with Ravashevsky in his arms, saying that he's still breathing and asking about the grandmother's condition. After this, we see them heading towards the shelter. Yeon wonders if he's lucky to be alive, how he became so weak and pathetic, and how he's now nothing but an idiot who can't do anything. We see a helicopter flying over the city, and Rin is watching it with a friend on the school rooftop. Rin tells her to pick up the clothes quickly, and not to ask why, just do it. Meanwhile, Chun goes to Tisik asking where he was and congratulates him for what he did with the elders. Tisik, agitated, asks if he remembers Kang Yeon. Chun asks why he mentions that guy, but Tisik prefers to leave the topic aside. Chun tells him to stop saying weird things, asking if he heard the helicopter, that they are surely dropping supplies, so it's better to call the others to get them. He tells Tisik that he will be on the roof and to make sure no one bothers him. When he goes up, he meets Rin and asks if they weren't hanging clothes and why they are wet and dirty. Rin asks if they are his. Chun says that the others are starting to smell and asks if she could wash their clothes. She asks if they don't have hands to do it themselves. Chun responds that the boys are busy defending the school and collecting food, but Rin interrupts and asks if anyone asked her to do it. If so, it would be better for her to go out and find her own food. Chun reminds her that civilization has crumbled, that going outside is no longer safe, the teachers are weak, and the other students know how dangerous it is out there, asking why she is the only one who thinks differently. Rin asks him why he determines who is strong, and reminds him that he is the one who has them locked up there. Rin's friend grabs her and tells her they should leave. Chun, having the rooftop to himself, grabs a chair to sit and rest while saying to himself, "I will protect this place." Returning to the shelter, we see the helicopter from before delivering supplies. One of the soldiers tells them that a bus will come in 2 weeks, and one of the cameramen tells them that the transmission systems will be fixed soon, so they should be on the lookout. On the other hand, we see Yeon training, remembering how weak he has become. He wants to seek revenge for what they have done to him and is willing to do anything to achieve it. The next day, the manager approaches Yeon to tell him that she found the name of his parents. Apparently, they were in another shelter and had also been actively looking for him. Yeon thanks her, and the manager tells him that she has a job for him and assigns him to the security group. She tells him to go to the warehouse and ask for H. Wang Chang. Yeon thanks her and takes the opportunity to ask if she can search for young Rin's name. The manager tells him she will do it as soon as there is a signal on the radio. Anyway, Yeon goes to the warehouse, and here we meet Hwang Cheng. He is a reserved man, and no one knows about his past. All they know about him is that he appeared a few months after the world shook, looking like a hungry wolf covered in blood. He did not talk about what had happened to him and refused to talk to other people, acting as if he had given up on life. Until one day, a gang of thieves appeared, and Mr. Park, who had been silent for a month, took off his coat and launched himself at them, defeating all the delinquents in a few seconds. Since then, he has been responsible for defending them on more than one occasion. We return to the school and meet Youngmun. Taesik approaches to ask if he will do anything to bring the supplies left by the helicopter the other day, and if he is scared, Taesik will do it himself. Mun reminds him that the supplies are transported by the military, and besides that, the people in the shelter are more alert these days, so it's better to find the right moment to do it. Taesik angrily asks if he's done, and tells him to stand up already. Mun tells him seriously that if he stands up, he'll kill him, and asks how much longer he plans to block his sunlight. At night, Yeon is on guard duty with Mr. Park. He thinks about the emotions he has felt in the last few days and wonders what he can do now. He had been living quietly for a while, and once the bus arrives, he will be reunited with his family, where Rin will also be. He is interrupted by Mr. Park, who tells him he will be gone for a while, and to keep watch. Yeon takes the opportunity to supervise the place and looks up at the stars, wondering if Rin can see them too. But then, two cars break through the gate and enter the shelter. Mun gets out of the car and orders his men to move. They only have 2 minutes and they start spraying fuel all over the place. Mun sees Yeon and asks him if he's going to stand there, since things are going to get hot. They light the fire and start taking everything from the warehouse. Yeon instinctively tries to stop one of the attackers, but Mun kicks him and tells him that he has been planning this for a long time, and that it's better if he stays on the ground. However, Yeon tries to attack him, but he is easily knocked down by Mun. Mun threatens to kill him if he tries to move again and tells his men it's time to go. Despite this, Yeon tries to stop him. Mun is about to knock him unconscious, but a book hits him in the face. When he asks who threw it, Mr. Park responds that he did it. Mun recognizes him since he had heard stories about how well he fought. Without thinking, he lunges to attack him, but Mr. Park easily knocks him down and tells his men that it would be better to return the items if they want to leave alive. But what he didn't count on was Mun having a taser, and after rendering him unconscious, he orders his men to move. Upon arriving at the school and checking the loot, they are surprised to find that everything was disposable utensils. Taesik mocks Mun and goes to tell Chun everything. One of the guys approaches him and tells him that he saw Yeon at the shelter and doesn't know how he's still alive after the beating he received. Back at the shelter, the manager tells Yeon that everything was part of a plan since they had previously had other looting incidents and regrets not telling him about it. And while they were talking, they received a signal. The emergency channel was finally working, so they turn on the generator and watch the news about the city's state. They talk about distress signals at Ingun School, and Yeon realizes that one of the 2 girls shown in the images was young Rin. He stays in a trance for a moment and goes out to look for her, wondering if she couldn't evacuate and if the other students and teachers are still prisoners there. What he knows is that he must save her. When he arrives at the school, he realizes that everything is well guarded, and while he was looking for a way in, he encounters Taesik. He asks him how he's still alive and why the hell he's there, telling him that he will make sure he stays dead this time. Yeon looks around and asks him if he came alone. Taesik takes away his flashlight, and he realizes that he doesn't have anything else with him. So, he hits him and knocks him down. Despite being weak, he can use his abilities to defeat him. Taesik makes him fall and grabs the radio to call for help. Yeon acts fast and starts hitting him until he knocks him down. On the ground, he asks him what happened to the school. The coward Taesik throws some dirt at him and then grabs a brick to attack him with it. However, Yeon manages to free himself and ends up knocking him out. With the little strength he had left, Yeon tries to leave the place, but one of the thugs arrives and without thinking starts hitting Yeon. He is not willing to give up. After all, he must save his friend. But out of nowhere he begins to hear a voice in his head. It asks him, "What are you doing? Why don't you run away from a situation where you can't win?" Yeon thinks for a moment and then leaves the place wondering if he has gone crazy. On the other hand, we see Rin. She tells her friend that she will go for a walk, although her friend thinks it's a bad idea and tells her they will see each other later. Rin goes out anyway and wonders if it's okay for the others to hide in the school, that they should at least try to find out how the rest of the world is doing. Then she runs into one of the guards. He is Cho Hyun Sup, a good friend of Rin and Yeon. He asks her where she's going. Rin asks if they are being spied on now. Hyeon tells her no, they are being protected. Rin angrily asks who decided they needed protection. What would happen if she decided to go out right now? Would they stop her? Hyeon replies that it's dangerous to go outside. But Rin strongly disagrees because how is she supposed to know when they don't let them out? Hyeon only says that things are complicated, that a system is needed to survive and rules are necessary to be a little more secure. Rin tells him he's starting to sound like Chun, that they have all started to become intoxicated with the power they have, and she's willing to go out. Hyeon tries to stop her, but Rin defends herself and asks who they are to have the power to tell them what to do. From what she has seen, they only want to build a kingdom where they can rule them. With nothing else to do, Rin returns to her room, thinking she can't go on like this, and if she has to persuade the others, she will. Then one of the teachers stops her, asking her not to do anything, that the world outside is terrifying. Both teachers and students are paranoid with the idea of the supposed danger outside. Returning to Yeon, he was escaping on a bicycle, but suddenly falls to the ground, and upon looking up, he sees the creature from before. The creature approaches him and asks if he can receive its communication. Yeon has no idea what is happening, and then the being starts to communicate. Observation Unit Number 19. These events occurred because it is a complex organism. Observation Unit Number 19 has been classified as unsuitable, and the observation procedure will be terminated. The morning after the accident, we see Chun's gang having breakfast, where we meet the other members of the group. Lim Kai-young, a guy who solves everything with violence, and Min Di-woon, Chun's best friend and possibly the strongest in the group. Here, Chun tells Moon not to worry about the accident that happened in the shelter, and that if he doesn't have enough people, he can ask for help from the attack group. Moon says not to worry, that it's fine. Lim mocks Moon, asking if he's being a crybaby about everything. Chun tells him that's enough, to stop bothering Moon about a small mistake, and that he's done well so far. Moon says it wasn't a mistake, that he was capable of checking the supplies if that guy hadn't gotten in the way. Chun tells him to stop worrying, that they can endure the month with the food they stole from the supermarket. And he asks his henchmen, Kim and Ju, to bring him kimchi and a bit of water. Taking advantage of the moment, he asks Taesik what happened at his house. Taesik, nervous, tells him that while he was walking at night, he encountered 3 troublemakers from the neighborhood and had to fight them. Lim asks if he won and if there are still people like that around and how he ended up like that. Taesik, uneasy, tells him yes, they still show up around here, and to imagine how they ended up if he's in that condition. Lim mocks him. Since he talks so much, he starts to believe that he's just making everything up, like a loser. Taesik stands up angrily asking who called him a loser. This situation makes Kim laugh. Taesik asks him seriously if he just laughed, but he is interrupted by Min, who talks about the situation of the teachers and other students, who are starting to believe that going outside is not so dangerous anymore, since they have seen helicopters flying over the area. Chun talks to them about the moment when the world shook. The world had collapsed at that precise moment, asking if they are unable to remember that, questioning the shelters or police and military protection, affirming that all those things would only cause more harm. That despite not knowing if it's safe out there, what he's clear about is that dangerous places are dangerous, and safe places are safe, asking if they don't believe the same. The others agree with their leader's idea, who reminds them that they are an important piece in all this, as they are the protectors and leaders of this place, and they should not forget that. Taesik, with nothing else to argue, leaves the place to meet Kim. He puts him against the wall, threatening him with a fork, asking if he was mocking him before, if he thinks it's funny. At that moment, Chun comes out asking what he's doing, if he's going to skewer him with that fork. Kim thanks Chun with fear, who tells him to stand up straight, hitting him in the stomach. He tells him to get up, if he thinks they are a joke, if he thinks it's funny when he goes out to protect his butt, and asks him to apologize properly to him. Hurt, Kim tells Taesik he's sorry, please forgive him. On the other hand, Mr. Park was having breakfast when he meets Ravashevsky, who wants him to follow him. After walking for a while, he finds Yeon lying on the ground. He takes him to heal his wounds, and when he wakes up, he asks him if it's a habit of his to end up looking like a corpse. Yeon wonders what happened to him, if everything was just a dream. He gets up and apologizes to Mr. Park, telling him he probably tripped on the stairs and thanking him for taking care of him. Mr. Park tells him he wasn't taking care of him, and tells him to leave since he's occupying his resting spot. Yeon apologizes and prepares to leave, but Mr. Park tells him he's good at taking beatings, if he hasn't thought of training. He even made up the excuse about the stairs when it's clearly evident that he's in a battle. Outside, Yeon meets the caretaker. She asks him if he's feeling better and takes the opportunity to tell him that the bus will come in a few days to take several people away, and that she has registered him on the list as an injured person so that he can go to a safer place and be with his family. At night, Yeon and Mr. Park are on guard duty. Yeon asks him if he's planning to go on the bus, and he says he has no problem staying until everyone evacuates. Yeon asks about his family, if they're not in the general shelter, but Mr. Park tells him he has no family. Yeon tries to apologize, but he tells him to stay calm, to get on the bus and spend happy moments with his family. As Yeon goes to bed, he thinks about what happened to Rin after all that gang took control of the school. But apart from that, they were the bastards who ruined his life. In the morning, we see Yeon training. He is thinking about the feelings he feels now. He is upset. He feels anger. He has rage and doesn't know how to calm his anger. He wants to seek revenge. The bus has arrived and people are getting ready to board it. Yeon takes the opportunity to go to Mr. Park. He thanks him for everything and asks him to stay safe and thanks him for taking care of Ravashevsky. He also says goodbye to him and tells him they will see each other soon. Yeon is about to get on the bus, thinking that once he arrives at the shelter, he will find a way to help the school. But in the end, he decided not to leave. Yeon approaches Mr. Park and tells him that he used to practice many sports before the coma, but now that his body is weak and fragile, he has worked to regain his strength, and he wants him to instruct him in the art of fighting. We go back to the day when everything started after Yeon's accident. Here we meet Master Yoon, who is heading to the school carrying a pizza for his students. At the school, Master Park meets Rin and her friend, who are helping Master Yoon with the records from the last year. Master Park tells Rin that her grades have dropped since the accident that happened with her classmate. And in a perverted way, he tells her that if she has any problems, she should make sure to tell him, that she should think of him as her father and not be afraid to ask him anything. At that moment, Master Yoon arrives with the pizza and invites Master Park to eat while taking him away from Rin. He sits down and tells him that he should have at least brought something to drink for the girls. Master Yoon tells them that he will run to buy the drinks, not to worry. As he goes down the stairs, he meets the grandfather, who tells him to be careful not to stumble and warns him that most of the students and teachers have already left, and that the place will be closing in a couple of minutes, after which the grandfather goes through the classrooms to check if they were closed. Upon entering the warehouse, he meets Chun's gang, asking what they were doing there and how they were able to enter. He tells the grandfather to leave them alone, not to worry, that they are just talking, or does he want him to report them to his father to get them fired? The grandfather lowers his head and tells them to hurry up as the building will be closing soon, and he leaves the place. Tisik laughs and tells him that being the son of a congressman has a lot of power, and jokes asking if he wants to join his family. And he asks the henchmen if that's not a good idea, as they were being tortured by the accident that happened with Yeon, and they were taking it out on them, as they had been suspended because of them. Meanwhile, Master Park asked Rin for help to remove some cobwebs, and her friend tells him not to worry and to go eat something. But the teacher insists on staying, as it would be dangerous. Rin tells him that she will go and change into her gym clothes to clean it up. However, the teacher stops her and tells her she'll waste time. He tells her to climb up the ladder since there is no reason to distrust him. Then the furious teacher Yoon appears and asks the teacher Park what he is doing. The agitated teacher tells him to lower his voice, that there's nothing wrong, that it's all a misunderstanding and they just wanted to clean the spider web. Teacher Yoon approaches and grabs him by the arm, telling him not to try to touch the girls again. But then the ground begins to shake, and the whole planet is plunged into chaos. The teacher takes the students to a safe place, while alien ships start appearing in the skies outside, dropping capsules onto Earth. And one of those capsules falls on the school, landing right where Chun's gang was. We return to the present, and Sup is thinking about the current situation, thinking that if that accident had not happened, no one would have bothered to follow Chun and his gang. We return to the past and see Sup after his training. He was a good friend of Yeon's in childhood, and he wonders if he is okay, and that it is time to go visit him. As he leaves the school, he sees a gang, thinking that Yeon probably had problems with them and they are probably responsible for his accident. But then the ground begins to shake, and he sees the capsule from earlier falling into the school. And he sees that the grandfather was injured, so he approaches to help him. The grandfather is okay and tells him that there are still students inside the building. Sup, without hesitation, enters to help. On the other hand, a strange being emerges from the capsule. We will call them Sentinels. The gang is terrified, and Chun orders them to leave the place. Meanwhile, Sup was helping the other students to evacuate. On the way, they meet Rin and the other teachers who are also escaping the building. Chun's gang finds the exit blocked and decides to go through the back exit, where they meet with the others and tell them that the front exit is blocked. So, they all head to the back. But on the way, they encounter the sentinel from before, blocking their path. One of the guys tries to push him aside with a shovel. However, the sentinel defends itself, raises its arm, and stuns the entire group. Its helmet opens, and it starts to communicate with them. If you resist or attack me, I will eliminate you. The native organisms are weak, calculated risk factors. Until they are removed, you will follow instructions. Despite being weak, you have shown intelligence. I will only give you this warning once, surrender. Chun takes advantage of its distraction and attacks it, thrusting the shovel into its neck. He asks for help from the others and begins to beat it brutally, but the sentinel raises its hand and pierces him in the side of the abdomen. Chun gives it one final blow with all his strength, taking off its head and ending it once and for all. From that moment on, Chun became the master and ruler of the school, with no one able to resist him. We return to the present, and Yeon is trying to convince Mr. Park to teach him the art of fighting. However, he has no interest in doing so, but gives him a chance. He tells Yeon that if he can knock him down in the next 10 minutes, he will accept his request. But if he fails, he will have to leave on the next bus. Yeon thinks about it and prepares to give it his all in those 10 minutes. Yeon starts by throwing the first punch, but it is dodged and he is quickly knocked down to the ground. Mr. Park tells him that he is too slow, that there is no reason to become strong in the current state of the world. And if he is looking for his family, why doesn't he just go to them? We go back to the past. After the world shook, we find Yeon's mother and uncle. Both were trying to enter the hospital to find Yeon, but due to the situation, the authorities were stopping them. The uncle takes advantage of a distraction and runs into the hospital, searching for his nephew. However, due to the state of the facilities, a rubble falls on his head, trapping him and preventing him from finding his nephew. We return to the present, and Yeon continues to receive a beating from Mr. Park. He recognizes that he has some talent, but the idea of going to school still seems silly to him. Yeon gets up to fight again, but once again ends up on the ground. Mr. Park asks him if he's taking all of this as a game, and if that's the case, he should just give up. Yeon gets up again to knock him down, but Mr. Park shows no mercy, hitting him while pointing out all of his weaknesses. He asks him how he expects to defeat his opponents when they are faster, stronger, and able to use any trick against him. Yeon replies that's why he wants Mr. Park to be his teacher. But Mr. Park asks him why he would teach a brat who treats a battle like a sport, and if that's his way of being, he should just leave him alone. Yeon gets up to attack him, saying it's not over yet. But Mr. Park puts him in his place, mocking how he announces his moves before attacking and telling him that if he really wants to win, he should attack him as if he wants to kill him. On the ground, Yeon questions how he should fight, and then remembers the fights he had before. He realizes that the trick is to play dirty, so he grabs some dirt and throws it at Mr. Park, then knocks him out with a headbutt. On the ground, he takes a pot and, though he hesitates for a moment, ultimately throws it at Mr. Park. Mr. Park accepts defeat and tells him he passed the test. We go back to the past, but this time from Yeon's point of view. He was an athlete with decent skills, but despite that, he never achieved a real victory. So when he entered high school, he decided to focus on his studies and leave sports behind. In his first year, he met Taesik, who approached him to ask for some money as a friend, but obviously had ulterior motives, to show his strength. However, Yeon remained calm and told him he didn't have any money, and even if he did, he wouldn't have any reason to give it to him. Taesik went on to find his next victim, Kim Ho-myung. Weeks passed and Yeon improved in his studies as he had wanted. However, he also noticed that the bullies at school had been harassing Kim, but he wondered if he should interfere or just ignore the situation. It had been a year since he entered high school and his student life was going well. However, the harassment towards Kim and other students had not stopped. But for Yeon, it seemed pathetic that at least they should fight to gain some self-respect. At home, he has lunch with his mother and uncle, and Yeon takes the opportunity to ask his uncle what school was like for him, if he used his strength to bully weaker students. His uncle denies it, and tells him that a man does not exercise to have strength and take advantage of others. A true strong man remains calm and protects others, maintaining order in school as if he were a guardian. Yeon tells him that the point is that strong people don't show their strength, while those who are not strong pick on the weak. His uncle agrees with him and tells him that it's something that has been happening forever and asks him if there are many boys like that in his school. Yeon responds that yes, there are many boys who are bullied from the early years. But for him, both the bully and the bullied are pathetic people. The uncle gets up angrily, telling him that he is no longer welcome in his gym and must resign from exercising. He hates the fact that his own nephew refused to protect the weaker ones despite knowing his own strength. He had not taught him to stay idle in the face of such acts. The next morning, Yeon ponders over his uncle's words, wondering what he should do. Then he realizes that Kim was also on the bus. He was a kind and very happy person outside of school, but once he entered, everything was hell. At the end of school, Yeon realizes that they were bothering Kim, but he was leaving as usual. However, at that moment, his uncle's words come to his mind. So, with no other option, he approaches them and tells them to leave Kim alone. Taesik is confused and proceeds to laugh at him, telling him that he is a fool, that he should have stayed quiet, asking him if he even knows how to fight. And he launches himself to attack him, swearing that from today, he will be his new slave. However, Yeon dodges him effortlessly, and Taesik falls to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Yeon approaches Kim, asks him his name, and tells him that he will protect him from now on. Taesik gets up with a wound on his head and angrily launches himself at Yeon, but Yeon stops him with a kick. Taesik doesn't want to end up humiliated and attacks again, but Yeon dodges his punches effortlessly and knocks him down. Taesik, badly injured, tries to get up again, but Yeon quickly moves in to hit him. But this hit is only meant to scare him, and he tells him that it's better to leave it at that. He says that he could have knocked him out a long time ago, but he didn't because of consideration, asserting that he won't be able to lay a finger on him until he graduates. Then he goes to Kim, helps him up to leave together, and tells Taesik to forget everything that happened today, that he can still be the leader of the class, but he has to leave others alone, or he'll have to deal with him. One would think that would be the end, but it was just the beginning of their problems. The following week, while Rin and Yeon were walking home, they encounter Taesik, who was with a group of bullies calling themselves the Four Celestials. They take the couple to a park, where the leader tells Yeon that he will pay for what he did to Taesik. However, these guys are nothing but a joke, and even Rin knocks one of them out without any problem. After this, the couple leaves joking about what happened, while Taesik swears to get revenge. We see the past of Chun and his gang. They were discussing what they would do when they entered high school. Chun tells them that he had been thinking about acting well for once, dedicating himself to studying and thinking about his future. Lim didn't believe that the famous Yongsung Chun was thinking of retiring, but Moon supported him and told them that acting like gangsters had become boring, that he had even been thinking of going back to work. So the gang decided to lead a quiet life, and everything went well for a while. However, due to Chun's reputation, they caught the attention of other gangs. These gangs asked Chun to join them in controlling the first-year students. However, the group refused, as they only wanted to live a quiet life. But due to their stubbornness, they were harassed and tortured for a long time, hoping that one day they would get bored and leave them alone. However, despite Chun's confidence in being able to endure it, in the end, he decided that they would control the damn school. So they invited the gang that was harassing them at night, and they attended thinking that Chun had reconsidered and would join them. However, it was quite the opposite. The boss got angry and approached him to hit him, but Chun and his gang defeated them without any problems. From then on, Yongsung Chun took over the school, in just a month, defeating anyone who stood in his way, regardless of whether they were from another school or even graduates, since thanks to his team, he was unstoppable. Taesik was aware of this, so he went to Chun for help. He accepted and called Yeon. Already on the rooftop, Lim asks him if he is the one who says that he has taken control of the entire school. Yeon doesn't know what they are talking about, but the cowardly Taesik tells them that he was the one who said that he would defeat Chun, and that he could win every fight without being hit until graduation day. Yeon understands the situation and tells them that although he had some altercations with Taesik, that had nothing to do with them, and that, as he said before, he didn't care what they did at school, he only helped a friend. Moon begins to doubt Taesik and doesn't believe that Yeon is really good at fighting, so he asks them to fight 2 against 1, and if they don't, they will be beaten up by the 3 of them. So Taesik and his friend rush to attack him, but Yeon dodges them easily and throws them to the ground. Chun's group sees his potential, so Lim asks for permission for him to enter the fight. He throws himself at him with a kick, telling him that he can offer him a better challenge, but after embarrassing him, he shouldn't go crying to his mom. Yeon tells him to remember what he's saying and prepares to give him a good beating. The battle begins, and Yeon easily dodges and blocks Lim's punches. He asks him what's going on, why he doesn't respond to the punches if he only thinks of dodging them. Lim asks him if he failed on purpose, but Yeon has no intention of fighting and tells him that he is probably seeing this as nothing more than a competition. However, Lim tells him to look at him curiously, and at that moment he punches him in the face, leaving him bleeding. So he looks at him and tells him that this is just getting started and attacks him. Yeon, with nothing else to do, fights back while Lim screams that they can now fight properly. Yeon was winning the fight and was about to knock him out with a kick, but when he did, Lim was still conscious and wondered how resilient he was. At that moment, Moon launches himself at Yeon with a kick. Yeon dodges it, and Moon tells Lim to rest, clean his face, and try again later, and he prepares to fight against Yeon, who attacks him, but Moon stops his blows, and thanks to his judo skills, he manages to knock him down without problems. Yeon, seeing that he is facing another technique, gets up and takes off his uniform to fight seriously. But at that moment, a teacher arrives to stop the fight. Unfortunately, Yeon is punished with a month of school service, while the others got away with it, as one of the group was the son of a congressman, and well, that has its advantages. While we were watching our protagonists past, in the present, Yeon was training with Mr. Park. For several weeks, he trained hard in Kakaroto style, having to bring a ball in less than 3 minutes while carrying a weight of 15 kilos, and then had the challenge of knocking down his master. After finishing that training, Mr. Park took him to a dark room to simulate the time chamber. There he kept him for a week, where Yeon would have to take every opportunity to attack his master and try to take the key from him, or else he would have to surrender. So the days went by, and the week came to an end. The bus had arrived again to take other refugees, and the caretaker approached Mr. Park to ask if he wasn't going this time since he had an injured arm. He says it's fine. The caretaker sees that Yeon is ready to go somewhere and tells him to be careful where he goes, that he will always be welcome. Mr. Park asks if he's going, and tells him that what he's going to do is too dangerous and it's not too late to change his mind. But Yeon is determined to go save his friends. Yeon is determined to go rescue his friends. Before leaving, he asks Mr. Park if he was able to have his letter taken on the bus. Mr. Park says yes, but he doesn't know when it will arrive at Yeon's family's destination. Yeon thanks him and also thanks him for all his help. As Yeon is leaving, Mr. Park speaks to him and tells him he has 3 days to return. Yeon smiles and leaves. Along the way, we see what was in Yeon's letter. Mom, Dad, Uncle, as you have probably heard, I am okay. After waking up, I received help from many people and recovered. I haven't been able to reunite with you because I have something to do, so don't worry. I know very well how dangerous things can be when you are alone. But don't fear for me, trust me and wait for me a little longer. And if you have already met Rin's parents where you are, please let them know that Rin is safe and I will bring her back with me, rest assured. On the way, Yeon thinks about what he will do, as he doesn't know how long it will take him to enter the school, and he needs food for the next few days. He remembers that the grandfather had told him to return home, as he had left extra provisions there, so he decides to go to the grandparents' house first. But on the way, he sees a girl peeking out from one of the houses, and she quickly hides when she sees him. Yeon stops to greet her and asks where her parents are. But as he sees that she is scared, he tries to talk to her while playing with the shadows. The girl tells him her name is Song-ai, but her father comes out and takes her away from Yeon while asking him who he is and what he is doing with his daughter. Yeon tells him he's from the shelter and just came to see if the girl was in danger. The father calms down a bit and asks him if he's not involved with the guys in capes. Yeon tells him no, not knowing what he's talking about. He asks why he couldn't make it to the shelter, and the father tells him they still had food in the basement, and they found out about the shelters too late, and when they tried to go, some guys in green capes robbed them, and they had no choice but to go back home. Yeon tells him he should try to go to the shelter now, but the man refuses and tells him it's not his problem, as people can't be trusted now, and he has to take care of them. Yeon tells him he will come back with more people in 3 days and can accompany him then. With nothing else to do, he heads to the old grandparents' house to pick up provisions, and as he leaves, he sees a crowbar at the door. Yeon thinks about whether it would be a good idea to take it, but ultimately decides not to. Meanwhile, at school, Taesik tells Chun that Rin wants to talk to him and asks if he wants him to tell her to leave. Chun tells him to let her in, and Taesik goes to tell Rin that it would be best for her to behave herself, but she doesn't care and tells him to move since he's in her way. Once inside, Rin talks to Chun about leaving, as it has been a long time since she last heard of any danger and many people want to check if it is safe to go outside. Chun responds that she herself witnessed what happened at the beginning, and many other groups have also gone out to confirm the same, but none of them have lasted 10 minutes out there due to the monsters. Rin asks her if she can assure that things are still the same, as she has seen helicopters flying over the area, and it is obvious that security networks are being built for rescue. Chun tells her that there have been people who have said the same thing about leaving, claiming that they will come back with help. However, none have returned. In addition, she hypothetically poses the idea that if there were no monsters, the outside world would still be dangerous, as it is enveloped in violence, theft, and even murder. Rin replies that if Master Yoon were still here, he would not be acting the same way. And she asks Chun if she is happy now that a high school delinquent is the leader in a dangerous situation, if she thinks he will become someone important or if she also wants to be a god. And as she leaves, she tells Chun that it's better for her to stop deceiving herself, as people like her enjoy bloodshed and false power. Chun remembers Master Yoon and we go back to days after the world-shaking event. Master Yoon was about to go out with a group to seek help. However, on the other hand, Chun's gang did not agree, as even though they risked their lives to save others, they were not taken into account and saw Master Yoon as the leader of the school, something Chun disagreed with. We return to the present. Chun and Taesik head to the building's warehouse, and upon entering, Chun tells Master Yoon that all of this is his fault. He was tied to a chair, and Chun tells him that he is nobody now and clarifies that she is now the protector of the school. We go back to Yeon, who was at the girl's house to leave some food. But as he was leaving, he heard noise inside the house. He turned around and asked if it was Song-ai, but behind him, there was a hooded man. He tries to hit Yeon, but Yeon dodges him. The hooded men ask him where he keeps his food, as if he tells them, they will let him live. But Yeon is not willing to back down and he hits two of them while telling them that no matter how bad the world may be, a girl shouldn't be hiding in fear. After saying those words, he starts to fight them. He realizes he has become stronger than before and tells the criminals that if he sees their faces again, things will end differently, so they better leave and have learned their lesson. However, they mock and laugh at Yeon. Then a noise is heard inside the house. It was the girl who had been taken hostage by one of the criminals, who tells her not to move and asks who the hell Yeon is. Yeon stays still, unable to do anything, thinking he is stupid for not having thought of everything. But then the girl's father rushes at the criminal and hits him with a frying pan. Yeon remembers his master's words, who told him that for criminals there are no defeats. They will threaten him at every opportunity, and he must plant the idea that if they can't kill him, they will end up dead. So he launches at the criminal and starts hitting him, and as a threat, he grabs one of his legs and breaks it, telling them that if they show up again, he'll break all their legs. He accomplishes this at all costs. After this, Yeon is healing the father's wounds and tells him to wait a couple of days, as he will return with more people and accompany him to the shelter. Then he leaves the house and takes his bike to go back to his grandfather's house for the crowbar, as he will need courage for this mission. People have changed, and he can no longer consider his colleagues as normal people, as they have become criminals, and he cannot show mercy to these types of people. After this, Yeon prepares throughout the night and into the next day to have everything ready to start his revenge. At night, we see a group of boys on guard, talking about how unnecessary it was to continue watching the area, as it had been a long time since there was any danger. But then, someone is seen approaching in the distance. The boys ask him who he is and that it would be better for him to stop if he doesn't want to get hurt. One of them realizes it's Yeon and grabs his radio to call for help. But Yeon lunges at them and knocks them unconscious. He approaches the boy who recognized him and plants the crowbar on the ground while asking him where Chun is. Meanwhile, Chun is getting ready to sleep, but he has a feeling that Kang Yeon has finally arrived. Yeon enters the school and both Chun and he are ready for battle. Chun goes to Taesik and wakes him up, telling him that Yeon has arrived and is lurking around the school. So he orders him to wake up the others to find him and bring him in. Taesik gets ready and goes to wake up the others to watch the area, grabbing the radio to ask for reports from the boys who were on guard duty, but they were tied up. On the other hand, Rin is getting ready to leave. Her friend opposes her because she believes it's dangerous outside, but Rin is determined and tells her that if there really is danger outside, she will come back, but if not, she will find a way to help everyone. Sup, on the other hand, was on guard duty as usual and calls someone to watch her post as she will be gone for a while. Rin was in the hallway and runs towards the guard and knocks him unconscious with a couple of kicks, thus clearing the way. Going back to Taesik, he was looking for Yeon accompanied by a group of people, asking if they had seen anything suspicious. Then they begin to hear noises coming from a building. It was Yeon practicing his aim with some screwdrivers. Upon hearing that they were coming for him, Yeon greets Taesik and tells him that he took his time even though he made noise to be found. Taesik orders to catch him and they start chasing Yeon. Yeon realizes there are 9 people after him and enters a room to escape. As soon as some of them enter and the door closes, Yeon secures it so they can't intervene. Taesik looks at him and laughs, telling him he's foolish because there's no other way out, as if he forgot what the school was like while he was in a coma. Yeon replies that it's the opposite because he's the one who locked them in. Tisik asks him if it's not too much for him alone to change the situation, as his reality is that the entire school is against him and he doesn't think he can take on everyone. Yoon replies that he also thought the same, but someone told him that the greatest truth for a human is that if they can change their heart, they can change their reality too. Yoon attacks and one by one starts knocking them down. Tisik sees Yoon's crowbar on the ground and tries to grab it, but Yoon stops him, looks at him and tells him to try to defeat him with it if he thinks he can. Tisik grabs the crowbar and tries to attack him from behind, but Yoon is stronger and knocks him down with a few punches. Outside the room, his henchmen try to get in, and Lim arrives asking what all the noise is about. He breaks the door with a single blow and realizes the intruder is Yoon. However, Yoon doesn't waste any time and kicks him, grabs the crowbar, heads towards the window to break it, and without thinking, jumps out of the building. He grabs the crowbar on the window and uses it to escape and enter the floor below. Tisik orders to follow him and Lim, excitedly, is the first to catch up. On the other hand, Chun was watching everything from his room, pointing his revolver at the window, wondering if he should shoot. Yoon keeps running and heads towards a terrace, where the others catch up and Tisik tells him he's an idiot for getting himself into a dead end. Lim asks him if he wants this to be the battlefield. However, Yoon waits for them to be ready, turns around, takes a leap, and jumps to the other building as if it were nothing. Everyone is left speechless while Yoon provokes them to follow him. Tisik orders them to go after him, and Lim tells one of the boys to go to his room and bring him a red bag, while ordering the others to guard the exits so that Yoon cannot escape. Meanwhile, Yoon was regaining his strength. Lim's arrival was not unexpected, but he arrived before Yoon could take care of Tisik. So now he will have to get rid of both of them and heads to the school gym. On the other hand, Rin was trying to leave the school, but due to Yoon's arrival, there were many guards. While trying to leave, he hears a noise and thinks it's a guard. However, it was Yoon, and they both prepare to attack each other, but then one of the guards sees him and calls the others. Yoon attacks him and runs away, while Rin stays wondering who it could be. Sup comes back and finds the guard on the floor, realizes that Rin has escaped, so he goes to get his things and goes out to look for her. As Rin and Sup leave, they hear Lim shouting for Yoon, both wondering if their friend Kang Yoon was really at the school. Lim keeps shouting, but Yoon throws a rock at him to knock him down, asking if they were looking for him. Everyone starts running to catch him, but Yoon has regained his strength and, thanks to his training, has more endurance and elasticity to the point of feeling an explosive force. Yoon takes them to the gym to throw them off, and inside the group separates to search for him. Lim starts shouting, asking where he is hiding, if he is scared to resume the fight, that no one will interfere and it will just be the two of them. Yoon responds that this is not a fight, since fighting with idiots is a waste of time. He grabs one of the screwdrivers and throws it at the lanterns they had, leaving them in the dark. People are confused, and in the darkness, Lim tries to hit one of his henchmen. However, Yoon is already used to this environment due to the training he had with his master, so he takes advantage of the opportunity and attacks them, directing all his blows towards Lim until he leaves him on the ground. Tisik grabs a stick and attacks him, calling him a coward, but Yoon repels his attack and asks him who he thinks he's calling a coward. Yoon then starts hitting him with his fists. On the ground, Yoon grabs Lim's left hand and tells him that he won't need it for a while, as he is now nothing but a simple villain, breaking his wrist. Lim gets up and grabs Yoon, but Yoon tries to react quickly, only for Lim to stop him and put him on the ground. Lim starts hitting him, telling him that he won't be defeated so easily. Yoon also throws a punch, but it only makes Lim more angry. Lim then throws Yoon to the ceiling and hits him against the wall, while saying to himself that he's really angry. He starts kicking Yoon, telling him that he's been training all this time, while Yoon was in a coma for almost a year, and he has no chance of defeating him. Lim takes a break after the massacre, while Yoon is left unconscious. On the other hand, Rin was climbing a wall to leave the school when Sup stops her and asks her if she really wants this. Rin tells her that she has made a decision. Sup then climbs the wall and helps her up, telling her that it's dangerous to go alone. Meanwhile, Moon's voice is heard on the radio, asking what's going on. One of the henchmen confirms that Kang Yoon is in the school, which surprises his friends. Returning to Yoon, he takes advantage of Lim's carelessness and grabs him by the neck with his arms, telling him that he's also been awake for a while, and trained with someone stronger than him. While Yoon tries to knock him out, Tisik hits him with a stick, telling him that he still has an arm left. However, Yoon defends himself and gives him a blow that leaves him on the ground. The boy Lim sent to get his bag arrives and tells him to throw it to him and not stop shining the area. Yoon takes a nunchaku out of the bag to fight for real this time and is handed his wooden sword. The fight begins and the blows come and go from both sides, but Lim feels discomfort due to the kick Yoon gave him earlier, and his ribs are broken. Despite that, he continues with the fight, but Yeon attacks him at his weak point and manages to take away his weapon. He had been trained in handling this type of weapon since he was a child by his father and uncle, so it's not a problem for him. Yeon then hits him mercilessly, and with a kick, he sends him to the ground. Then he jumps on him and gives him the final blow in the ribs, leaving him unconscious. Yeon wins the fight and gets rid of Lim's other henchman. He tells himself that he can't afford to rest, as this is only the beginning. After defeating Lim, this was only the beginning. Yeon leaves the gym to face his next opponent, and Moon had been guarding the exits to prevent Yeon from escaping. He asks if Yeon is alone, and Moon responds that he is, but it wouldn't be wise for him to fight in his current state as he looks tired. However, Yeon prepares to fight and thanks Moon for coming, but Moon tells him that he is mistaken and that he was only waiting for the opportunity to catch him. Two people emerge from behind and try to trap him with a net, and Moon informs Chun through the radio that he caught Yeon in the gym. Yeon, on the ground, thinks he still has a chance and throws a punch at one of the guys. An angry Moon grabs him and knocks him to the ground. Chun tells them to take Yeon to the rooftop of the school, and Moon orders his guys to tie him up well for transportation, while Chun gets ready to finish this problem once and for all. Meanwhile, Sup and Rin see the intruder being taken away and realize it's Yeon. Rin tries to help, but Sup stops her because the place is full of guards. Rin tells Sup they should go save their friend, but Sup responds that it's not the right time and he'll go check on the situation. Suddenly, someone falls, and it's Kim who asks if Yeon is really in the school. If that's the case, he says he can enter and help him. Kim enters the building, pretending to bring water for Moon, but by not being careful with his words, one of the guys suspects him and takes him to Moon. On the rooftop, Moon was preparing everything for Chun's arrival when he realizes Yeon had already woken up and asks him if he got caught on purpose. Yeon hits the guy and tells Moon that he had been training his body for a month, but he feels his body has become strange because he can achieve anything just by thinking about it. Moon says he's a fool, and it's difficult for him to break free, but Yeon destroys the net and frees himself. He tells Moon that he was resting while listening to him and starts eating a can of tuna to regain his energy, saying that he must defeat Moon before Chun arrives if he wants his plan to succeed. Moon goes silent and starts laughing, telling Yeon that it was pure luck that he managed to free himself from the net, and that it won't be so easy to defeat him. Yeon smiles and tells him that he won't be able to beat him. Moon attacks Yeon, but Yeon dodges and strikes back, telling him that he only needs a minute to end this. Moon raises Yeon's weapon and attacks, but Yeon stops him with one hand and headbutts him, thanking him for picking up his weapon. Angry, Moon pulls out his taser and warns Yeon not to move if he doesn't want to be electrocuted, stating that he's not like the others and prefers the easy way in fights. Yeon thanks him again for picking up his weapon, knowing that he had it, and ties him up to a bar. Yeon tells him that distance doesn't matter as he won't be able to dodge his attacks now. He throws the bar at Moon, who luckily manages to dodge it, but becomes scared. Yeon asks if he's afraid and challenges him to attack if he's so confident. Moon prepares to attack, but manages to barely dodge Yeon's attack, leaving him with a wound on his forehead. Moon laughs and tells him that it's okay to show off his toy, but if he keeps fighting like that, he won't have a chance to get out. Even if he does, he'll be surrounded by his boys in the building, and his only way out would be to jump off the roof, but it would be difficult for him to do so as he must have some trauma from his past. Yeon calls him a coward for wasting his time to wait for the others to arrive. Moon attacks while asking who Yeon is calling a coward, as that's efficiency. Yeon tries to avoid it, but Moon dodges his attack and grabs him. However, Yeon's weapon hits him in the neck, and he pulls him down and kicks him in the stomach to make him fall. But before he falls, Moon grabs him by the neck and uses his own technique to knock him to the ground, telling him that this is how it's done. In pain, Moon grabs a chair to attack, but Yeon breaks it with a kick and tells him that he'll have to use more force now that he's been exercising to knock him out. Moon pleads with him not to do it, saying that he'll cooperate, but this was just a trick to buy more time. However, Yeon tells him that it's not necessary, as it ends here. Moon tells him to wait, and luckily one of the guys enters with Kim, who is happy to see that Yeon has awakened from his coma. Moon stands up and puts Kim on the ground to strike him, telling Yeon not to move or he'll break Kim's arm. He also orders Yeon to leave the weapon on the ground and push it towards him. With no other choice, Yeon unties the bar and leaves it on the ground. Moon takes the opportunity and hits Yeon with a blast from the taser. Yeon is paralyzed and about to faint, while Moon kicks him in the stomach. Chun arrives and interrupts, asking what's going on and why nothing is resolved. Moon asks for a moment to take revenge. He grabs Yeon by the hair and starts hitting him. Chun tells him to relax and respond, but Moon insists on having a moment. He puts Yeon on the edge of the building and asks if he wants to be thrown off again like last time. Yeon ties the rope around his hand and responds that it won't be necessary, as he will fall on his own and Moon will help him do it. As Moon tries to hold on, he can't bear the weight and lets himself fall. However, Chun catches him by the leg while Yeon falls into some bushes. Later, Yeon returns to the school gym, takes his things, and sneaks in through one of the windows to rest and heal his wounds. The next morning, Lim, Moon, and Taesik rest from the injuries Yeon inflicted on them. Moon tells Taesik that he heard he knew Yeon had already been at the school, and now his problem has become bigger because of his pride. Taesik doesn't respond as he is also angry. Meanwhile, everyone is looking for Yeon outside, and Rim returns to his room, thinking about Sup's words that there's nothing more to do but wait for the right moment to help Yeon. Meanwhile, Chun goes to Min and asks if he is aware of the situation. Min confirms he is, but finds it strange that Yeon has defeated the others. He knows Yeon is hiding, and once he finds him, he will take care of everything. Chun tells him that he knows where Yeon is hiding and asks if he wants to go. While this is happening, Yeon has been sleeping in the gym and remembers his childhood with Rin. Despite being into sports as a kid, he never used them to defend himself as Rin always took care of the bullies. Rin would scold him for not doing anything, but Yeon explained that his father and uncle told him not to use his strength to fight others. Rin agreed, as long as they stay together, she will protect him. Yeon wakes up, not knowing how long he has been unconscious, but now he's okay. However, Min is already there. Yeon gets scared and Min without thinking kicks him, knocking him to the ground. Yeon gets up and tells him that despite hearing what happened to his colleagues, he dared to come alone. Min tells him not to worry, almost no one knows he's here, because if they all came to catch him, he would lose interest in doing it. Yeon replies that it's a relief, as he can take care of them all if he defeats them one by one, so he attacks Min and kicks him in the rib. However, Min stops him with his hand and tells him that he is enough to defeat him, lifts him up, and slams him to the ground. Yeon kicks him and gets up to punch him, but Min dodges it and throws him to the ground effortlessly, while telling him that this is not only about strength, but also about speed. Yeon gets up and starts taking off all the weights he had on his body, like Rock Lee, since this situation calls for it and now they can fight for real. Min finds it funny and doesn't think there's any difference, but Yeon approaches him quickly and hits him in the face, while telling him that he's already noticing the difference. Min grabs his face and spits out the tooth he broke. He tries to hit him back, but Yeon dodges it and kicks him. He tells him he'll see how long he can hold on, and Min replies that he should try to knock him down if he can. He throws a punch, but Yeon dodges it and returns a couple. However, Min grabs him by the head and tells him that his tricks won't work for long. And with a knee, he knocks him to the ground, tells him he expected more from him, confesses that he didn't want power just for being big. He always tried to keep a low profile, but somehow always ended up fighting. He faced athletes, martial artists, and even champions, but despite that the result was always the same, he's standing in front of a dying body. Yeon gets up from the ground and tells him that this time will be different, he just has to find his weak point. They both attack, and blows come and go from both sides. Min recognizes that Yeon is not like his previous opponents and now understands how he defeated Lim. So he gets serious and throws a punch. Yeon tries to counterattack with a kick, but still takes the blow that knocks him to the ground. Min starts hitting him on the ground and tells him that defeating his colleague was a great achievement. Yeon takes advantage to grab his arm and do a hold, but Min avoids it with a blow, leaving Yeon lying on the ground. With his few strengths, he approaches his things, while Min asks him how he became so strong, as he was not even close to being a professional before. But now he's at his level. Yeon agrees with him and tells him that the only difference he sees is the weight. However, he remembers that this is not a real fight, so if he can't find any weakness, he can create one. Yeon takes out the screwdrivers and throws one at one of his legs. He was about to throw the other one, but he notices the presence of someone else. He stops to think, and realizes that this is bad, because if someone else joins, he won't be able to defeat two people at once. Yeon turns around and sees Chun sitting and watching everything. He tells him that he doesn't plan to intervene and can finish what he started. Yeon wonders what he should do, if escaping would be the best option. But in the end, he decides to throw it at Chun. However, he stops him as if nothing happened and asks if he is sure about doing that it would be better for him to focus on the fight since Min is very angry. Yeon turns around and is hit by Min. He falls to the ground. Min takes the screwdriver from his leg and takes advantage of the situation to attack him. Luckily, Yeon manages to dodge it and gets up to fight. He starts hitting him continuously, and after a couple of punches to the chin, he manages to knock him down. While this was happening, Chun remembered how Yeon challenged him to fight one-on-one in the gym and was beating him up. However, Yeon realizes that he can't defeat him and apologizes for what he did to settle things down. But Chun doesn't plan to let it go so easily since he is involved because of him. Yeon tells him that if he manages to defeat him, he promises to leave him and his friends alone. Chun accepts, but it will be difficult for him to do so. The fight has been going on for a while, and Yeon asks him what he gains from all this. Chun tells him it's a reciprocal deal. Taesik came to them for help and now he has to finish what he started. He punches him and tells him that he doesn't understand, that he brought this situation upon himself by acting tough. He shouldn't have gotten involved if he wasn't prepared to face the consequences. Yeon finds what he says ridiculous, and in anger, he grabs a fire extinguisher to attack him. But Chun tells him to stop. Chun responds that he doesn't have the guts to do it, and that's his problem. We go back to the present, and Chun was watching Yeon. He wanted to see how far he could go now that he has no limitations. Yeon takes advantage of Min being on the ground and picks up the screwdriver. He runs towards him, using his back to push himself and reach Chun. Without hesitation, Chun dodges his attack with a kick that sends him to the ground. He goes down to the battlefield and tells him that if he wants to include him so badly, he'll oblige. Yeon tries to attack him, but Chun's colossal strength knocks him down. Chun lifts him up by his hair and begins to beat him mercilessly, leaving him unconscious with a single blow. Chun pulls out his gun and shoots without hesitation, but luckily for Yeon, the bullet misses and hits the ground next to him. He tells Yeon that he only improved a little and shouldn't have had high hopes from the beginning. He apologizes to Min for intervening in the fight, but says that sometimes things don't go as he expects. Min tells him not to worry. As Chun walks away, he hears a thud and sees Kim with a fire extinguisher in his hand, fearfully spraying it at Min while shouting at them to leave his friend alone. And that's where the video ends. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, we see an android telling a boy that he hasn't eaten for 65 hours. Despite his body being in the process of awakening, humans cannot survive without proper nutrition. This boy is subject 27-13 and he demands that he eats his food as soon as possible. The boy gets angry and destroys the device beside him, telling him that his name is Kim's son and not to call him that again, or else he'll destroy him. After his sudden appearance, Kim manages to hit Min, causing him to lose balance. Not knowing what to do, in a moment of panic he just tries to take Yeon out of the place. Still dazed, Min tries to chase after them, but Chun tells him to let them go as they can't leave the school, and it will be easy to find them later. Meanwhile, the sentinel who Yeon encountered had been analyzing his condition. Apparently he was in a process to awaken his inner strength, so he decides to go look for him. But upon arrival he realizes that the area around the school was protected by a barrier. They call it the Kingdom of Death, and to enter he must use some of his energy. Anyway, going back to the previous events, with great effort Kim takes Yeon to a small room in the gym to hide him. But not having enough strength to carry him the rest of the way, he decides to leave him there while he goes to seek help. On the other hand, we see Mr. Park trying to play with Robashevsky when he sees that the dog has regained strength. However, the dog has no intentions of playing, and urgently tries to take the old man to a certain place. Back to Kim, after retrieving his things, he communicates with Rin and Sup via radio, as planned earlier. As he runs, he informs them about the situation and asks for their help. But shortly after, unfortunately, he runs into Taesik and his group. They begin to beat him up, saying they heard his message through the radio. Kim then realizes that he had his radio on the wrong channel, and regretfully can do nothing but receive the inevitable blows. Meanwhile, Yeon wakes up confused in the gym room, with no strength and difficulty breathing. Out of nowhere, he hears the door open, and to his misfortune, it's Min, who found him thanks to Chun's hunch. Min asks if he can do whatever he wants with him, and Chun tells him yes, making it clear that he couldn't care less. Yeon can only watch, unable to move due to his terrible condition. Min lunges to deliver a fatal blow, but unexpectedly, a kind of force field protects Yeon, surprising Chun and making Min fly away from the impact. The strange creature from before appears again, which makes Chun very nervous, unable to believe what he's seeing. The creature disappears from the place with Yeon suddenly, not giving them time to do anything else. After the shock moment, Chun waits for a few seconds, and then starts laughing uncontrollably, saying that's great. Going back to Kim, after receiving an intense beating, he is saved by Rin, who heard the radio message earlier. The girl takes down several thugs without a problem, and is then supported by Hyun, who also joins the fight, managing to finish them off. After Hyun is taken by the mysterious being, It scans his vital signs, noticing that his body is overloaded with multiple fractures. It declares that it will take approximately 275 hours to recover to a natural basic level. After some calculations, the being uses 5.78% of its power to start an accelerated recovery for Yeon, whom it calls the observation object 19. After finishing, Yeon stands up confused, asking who he is supposed to be and why he is showing up again. But besides that, he is more interested in knowing what was done to him, since he has no idea how he can move. The creature asks him if he is channeling his signal again, and Yeon clarifies that something is echoing in his head, but it's hard to describe. The being then communicates differently, making Yeon hear a clearer voice. Yeon then asks why he helped him, still very suspicious despite being saved. The sentinel tells him that his life activity stopped for a long time, and it is revealed that he was responsible for awakening him from his coma. Meanwhile, at school, Kim returns to the room where she left Yeon with Rin and Sup, but panics when she finds the room empty. Sup tells them that they probably caught him, as there is no way Yeon could have escaped in his condition. Despite the critical situation, Sup comes up with an idea after thinking about it for a while. Throughout all this, we are shown Sun Kim again, walking through the streets, being followed by an android that insists his vital signs are still unstable, so he should consume water and food as soon as possible. Sun keeps walking, and despite collapsing, he gets up again, saying that in his mental state he can't relax and take care of himself. The android insists, saying that he has barely gone through the initial stage of awakening, so his body will suffer too much if he continues like this. However, he is interrupted by two criminals on a motorcycle who kick Sun to rob him. The criminals are disappointed to see his belongings, noticing that he only has textbooks in his backpack instead of food. One of them asks what kind of person still carries books when the world has been destroyed. Sun gets up from the ground, asking for his backpack back, but the criminals interrogate him, asking where he hides his food. The boy assures them that he is alone and has nothing, asking for his backpack back again, promising that he will leave if they give it to him. But the thugs do not take his threat seriously, and one of them mocks him while burning the backpack with a lighter, throwing it to the ground afterwards. Both of them mock even more when they see Sun desperately trying to put out the fire. When the fire goes out, Sun takes the backpack keychain, apologizing internally to his sister, and then stands up and stares at his attackers, making them angry. One of them approaches aggressively to hit him with a huge wrench, but to his surprise, Sun manages to stop his attack with one hand. Without giving him time to react, Sun takes the thug's hand and effortlessly breaks it, causing the guy to writhe in pain. After beating up the criminals, they were left terrified and trembling, begging for their lives. Sun lifts the heavy motorcycle with ease in a threatening manner, and the thugs become even more terrified when they see the monstrous strength of the boy. Desperate, they apologize to Sun, begging him not to hurt them. Sun then lowers the motorcycle and asks the thugs for the key, which they hand over without further ado. With this, the boy gets on the motorcycle and leaves the place, with the android still following him closely. Meanwhile, at school, Chun communicates with what appears to be the ghost of the sentinel he defeated. Seeing that he could not find Yeon, Chun asks him if he can send a message to him using their telepathy. The being tells him that it is possible, and indeed, seconds later, Yeon hears Chun's message, who tells him that he had no idea that he was just like him. In addition to that, the boys caught Sup and Kim, clarifying that Rin managed to escape, but they won't take long to find her. Therefore, if he wants to save them, he will have to show up at the school before sunrise. Without saying more, Yeon starts to move, but the sentinel tells him to stop, warning that his body has barely recovered. Yeon asks if he will stop him, but the being tells him that he can only try to persuade him and give him recommendations, but he is not able to force him to do anything. Having said that, he advises him to protect himself, as his current judgment is irrational and imprudent. Still, Yeon says he has to go save Rin and his friends, because it is what he has decided, and he does not care what anyone says. After all, he doesn't even know if he is human or an alien. Therefore, Yeon leaves, thanking the sentinel for his help, but asking not to be stopped. After this, Yeon appears at the school again, still able to move, but still quite weak. Despite trying to go unnoticed, Yeon runs into Mun, who quickly notifies with his radio that he has found him. Meanwhile, the sentinel who took care of Yeon's regeneration waits outside the school, unable to approach again. Without using energy, he tries to penetrate the barrier wearing only his suit, planning to use the power he has left to hide when he is in the restricted area. Trying to cross the barrier, He receives an electric shock and announces a power loss, so he quickly returns to his charging area due to the exposure of his location. Meanwhile, Yeon is repeatedly hit by Mun and his partner, who mock his pathetic condition. Mun easily dodges Yeon's blows, who, due to his exhaustion, is noticeably slower than before, but still standing, ensuring that they cannot defeat him. Despite this, Mun laughs, saying that this time he is defenseless and it looks like he's about to die. Then he starts hitting him again, saying he'll beat him until he can barely breathe. After all, Chun only ordered him to keep him alive. While Yeon receives the brutal beating, he remembers the words of Mr. Park during his training, who told him that if he really had no energy, he would not be able to open his eyes or speak. Therefore, it is not that he has no energy, but that he has no will to fight. His teacher told him that if he has enough energy to open his mouth and speak, he should at least bite his opponent, since you cannot play fair in a fight against criminals. In addition, he does not need much power to knock someone down, but all he needs is to hit a couple of places in the right spots. With this in mind, Yeon rushes towards Mun and bites his ear with force, causing him to scream and move away in pain. The protagonist takes advantage of this to knee him in his weak spot, causing Mun to fall to the ground unable to move. Quickly, Yeon knocks down Mun's partner and hits him until he gives him the location of his friends. On the other hand, Rin watches hidden on one of the school roofs and sees Yeon approaching Taesik and his group. Completely exhausted, Yeon prepares to fight, thinking that maybe he does not have enough determination to fight in his state. Still, with his broken body, Yeon manages to defend himself against several attacks, and despite taking a couple of hits, he manages to take down Taesik, and then breaks his other arm. Yeon moves forward without energy, but soon he is hit by Lim, who appears accompanied by Min and Chun, who expresses his disappointment to see that Yeon can't even stand up. Despite this, Yeon makes the effort to stand up, which only further confuses Chun, who simply tells his boys to make sure not to kill him. Meanwhile, Rin manages to reach the place where Sup and Kim are locked up, explaining the situation to them. After freeing them, they decide to go look for the rest of the people in the school to inform them about the situation and try to escape together. But before leaving the room, they are surprised to see Master Yoon tied up and lying on the floor among the debris. After they free him, he explains that there are shelters in all regions where people are transported for safety. But despite returning to the school to get everyone out of there, he ended up being silenced by Chun and his group. Rin is silent for a few seconds, and then asks Master Yoon to try to convince the people in the school to leave. He warns them that he will go find Yeon, and then catch up with them. Sup accompanies her, and soon they find him lying on the ground, completely battered by the beating he took. Meanwhile, Mr. Park pursues Ravashevsky, surprised to see the dog acting like he's about to die. Unexpectedly, Ravashevsky stops and starts barking, seeing Sun passing by on his motorcycle. Returning to Yeon, he is protected by his friends after receiving the beating of his life, leaving him unable to move. Sup wields his wooden sword, intending to distract them while Rin escapes with Yeon. However, everyone is paralyzed when a bullet pierces Sup's wooden sword, breaking it in half. Chun orders them to step aside, saying that he needs to deal with Yeon. But before he can do anything, everyone is surprised to see that Yeon is being covered by the tail of the creature that protected him earlier. Chun becomes agitated and starts shooting, but Yeon quickly gets up with inexplicable power. Yeon runs towards Chun, dodging all the bullets, and with a single attack manages to disarm him, and then give him a powerful kick. He also hits Min and Lim with an iron bar and orders his friends to go with the rest of the school. But Rin tells him that they won't leave without him. In that moment of distraction, Min knocks Yeon down to start hitting him, but he dodges, saying he's too slow and returning the blows. Finally, Yeon stands up and tries to hit Min with his iron bar, but Chun stops the attack with one hand and gives Yeon a strong blow. Still, Yeon quickly recovers and begins a fierce fight against Chun. Shortly after, Chun falls to the ground, but Yeon continues trying to attack him, completely aggressive. Rin tries to stop him, but Yeon keeps shouting, exclaiming not to get in his way, and he doesn't react until Rin slaps him, making him reflect. After all, he already had what he wanted. He found Rin. Therefore, Yeon leaves the place with his friends, collapsing on the way shortly after due to the overexertion he made and unable to move on his own. So, Sup decides to go on his own and distract the bullies that are chasing them so that Rin can escape with Yeon. They try to leave the school, but due to their condition, they fall down the stairs and are cornered by the bullies. Rin becomes desperate when she sees that Yeon can't get up, but unexpectedly, Ravashevsky appears and attacks the delinquent who was about to hit them. There we see Mr. Park appear, and when Yeon sees him, he starts crying with relief. Mr. Park looks at him and simply tells him that he didn't come back after 3 days, which is why he is there. He then talks to Rin and helps her move Yeon to a safe place, but the bullies become angry and approach aggressively, saying that Chun is on his way, and they can't take Yeon. Mr. Park sighs exhausted and has no choice but to fight, easily defeating each opponent one by one. After finishing with everyone, Mr. Park is ready to leave, but unexpectedly, Min and Lim appear, holding Sup hostage. Lim launches into a fight against the old man, despite being badly injured and having broken ribs. Soon Mr. Park knocks him down, leaving him unconscious and saying that no matter who he is, he can't move with broken ribs. Min watches him, and Park asks if he also wants to try. Min then throws Sup down the stairs, saying that he doesn't need hostages. Both start fighting, where the old man receives his first blow, surprised to see how strong Min is. But shortly after, Sun Kim appears, talking to the android that is pursuing him. The android confirms that Yeon is target 19, but Sun says he doesn't look like it at all, noting that Yeon has gone through multiple bouts of exhaustion. The android then explains that he has only gone through the early stage of being awakened, and his body is overloaded. Mr. Park looks at the child with concern, thanking him for taking them there on his motorcycle but warning him that it's dangerous to get closer. Despite the warning, Sun tells them that he will take care of it from there and approaches Min, who tells him not to bother him. Sun tells him that he is the one bothering him, which angers Min enough to say that due to his weight category, he can destroy him with a single blow. Having said that, he punches him with all his might, but to everyone's surprise, Sun doesn't even flinch. After analyzing Min's words, Sun punches him in the stomach, hard enough to lift him up and leave a dent in his torso. When Min's body falls to the ground, the android comments that he has just killed an ordinary human. Sun tells him that he knows, but it wasn't his intention to do so. Shortly after, he is unexpectedly attacked but manages to react in time and evade it. His attacker turns out to be Chun, who now has modified arms, as he took the arms of the sentinel he defeated the first time, and they fuse to his body without a problem. Chun smiles at the child and says he is quite lucky since apparently another has appeared on his own. He then asks if he is more advanced than Yeon, but Sun doesn't respond and instead asks which side he's on. Chun launches at him, exclaiming with a smile that he is on the strong side, the side that always wins. Sun receives a powerful blow, stepping back a few paces, but he is hardly affected. Mr. Park watches in shock, unable to believe what he sees, and insists they leave the place before he gets hurt. Sun tells him that Chun won't let them go anyway, let alone in his monstrous current state. Therefore, he tells him to simply stay behind and not get in his way. Soon after, Chun hits Sun multiple times, saying that he is definitely different, as such blows are more than enough to kill an ordinary person. Sun's calm attitude does not disappear, and he asks Chun if he is still human, or if he is one of them currently. Chun continues to attack wildly, exclaiming that it doesn't matter, and the only important thing is that he is about to absorb them. Sun does nothing but receive blows, but asks again if he is human. Chun tells him it's difficult to answer that. After all, he has never seen anyone else with a weapon like that inside their body. As he continues to attack, Chun exclaims that he was told it is just the beginning, and he will be much more powerful if he steals the core growing inside Sun. Chun then boasts of being the strongest, and says that with how slow Sun is, it's only a matter of time before he defeats him. But Sun stops a powerful attack from Chun that was aimed at the others, absorbing the impact with just one hand. He then asks Chun if he has never left school, and asks why he thinks he wasn't fazed by seeing him like this. Sun explains that he has seen countless monsters like him lying on the street, monsters he has seen wearing that suit. Seeing that Chun doesn't plan to tell him anything, Sun asks the android if he is still human. And though it's complicated to decipher, the android tells him that considering current standards and his data, it's difficult to say the guy is human. This is enough for Sun, who takes on a darker demeanor and tells him there is no reason to keep him alive now. The real fight begins, and Sun now returns attacks destructively, causing debris to fly through the air. Yeon, Rin, and Mr. Park watch completely shocked at the inhuman strength of the boy. Soon, Sun delivers the final blow, right to Chun's chest, shattering it and ending his life. Sun remembers his past, where he always felt like a burden to his sister, being too weak for his age. His sister was the only family he had, and she did everything to take care of him, living a peaceful life despite being orphans. That was until the global catastrophe happened, and the sky was filled with strange ships. In the chaos, his sister carried him while he was injured, but she inevitably fell while running, so he went to get help. However, when he returned, Sun was already standing, with a strange feeling in his body. A capsule fell nearby, and from it emerged the Sentinel, who questions how foolish they were to choose someone so weak as an observation targetee. But another being communicates with him, clarifying that his body has already been rejuvenated by E, so it serves them to find identical DNA and get rid of it. The being says that he understands it, and unexpectedly takes Sun's sister, saying that the identical DNA is secured. Sun cries for her sister and tries to reach her, but she tells him to run, and before she can say more, she is locked in a capsule. Sun is hit by the being, and he only thinks about how weak he is, as he couldn't protect his sister. As he falls to the ground, he thinks about what he needed from the beginning, and his power awakens at that moment. Still standing, with tears in his eyes, he hits the being that took his sister with all his might, managing to destroy it. Back in the present, Sun decides to go to the shelter with Yeon and the others. Time passes, and Sun asks the android again if Yeon can really help. He tells him that he has a slow process of awakening something, but he is still a special case. Meanwhile, Yeon sees the being constantly, so he asks what it is supposed to be and why it is following him. Very affected by what he couldn't do, Yeon asks what it wants from him, as he feels like he is just being ridiculed. Very upset, he demands that it stop hiding behind that mask and stop torturing him. To his surprise, the being opens its suit, and a humanoid figure comes out of it, asking him if it looks better. After a pause, Yeon simply asks him all the previous questions again, but the being confesses that they need to find one thing that only humans have. But they are not just monitoring them to find the answer. Yeon tells him that he has been feeling as if his body has been undergoing changes out of nowhere, feeling an uncontrollable power, but in the next moment, feeling completely empty. The being explains that this is Symphono, which treated him and planted power cells inside his body, although it is not all powerful. It explains that the treatment given to observation subjects is only a small part of what Symphono can do, so there would be no side effects. Therefore, his awakening process is slow because his motivation and natural abilities are low. The being tells him that he found him interesting for being so bold and for making decisions that he simply couldn't understand. He confesses that he wanted to find the answer they were looking for, but it doesn't seem like he is the one who has it. It explains that there have been cases where they started awakening, but then returned to normal without showing progress, and he must be one of those cases. Yeon is scared to see that the being collapses, and it tells him that he really needs his suit to survive in the atmosphere of that world. When he returns to his suit, Yeon asks him what they want from him, but the being tells him that it is something he has to discover himself. Shortly after, Yeon tries to ask Sun, but he also doesn't know how to answer him. And although he couldn't find out much, Yeon teaches the boy some boxing and even gives him a notebook full of his own advice, as despite the monstrous strength he has, he needs to perfect his technique. After a few days, thanks to Rin, Yeon discovers that he has a younger brother, one who was born during the time he was in a coma. This makes Yeon enormously happy, who can't believe he has a brother as he has always been an only child. The next day, he doesn't want to waste any more time and decides to go alone to rescue the people still in the school. Mr. Park asks him if he should give him a day or two this time, but Yeon confidently responds that he will only need 3 hours. Sun takes him on his motorcycle, telling him that he won't intervene as it's not his problem. Of course, Yeon tells him it won't be necessary. When they arrive at the school, Yeon thanks Sun for the ride and tells him he can go back. But after hesitating for a few seconds, Sun says something before leaving and reveals to him that once he believes he has the power, he will feel different. Now much more confident, Yeon thanks Sun again and heads to the school with determination. Yeon has no problem taking out the bullies one by one, while on the other hand, Chun's broken body rests in a room. The Sentinel watches him, thinking that he is now ruined, even though they had high hopes for this specimen. Nevertheless, the being asserts that it was fun to see him, and despite being the perfect type of human to be on Pirha's side, it all ends here. After many fights, Yeon becomes more and more energized, managing to overcome anyone who gets in his way. That same afternoon, he fulfills his promise and returns to the shelter with the people who were held captive at the school. Yeon reflects on everything that has happened and sees that his only motivations so far have been to avenge the guys who ruined his life and to keep his friends safe. And now that he has achieved all of that, it's enough for him because he just wants to rest in a safe place with his friends and family. Days later, Yeon receives a letter from his mother and is filled with happiness when he sees that it's a picture of his brother with their mom, who wrote to him to hurry up and meet him. The next day, the bus that will take them to their families is finally about to leave. Yeon says goodbye to Mr. Park and Sun, who stays behind because he still has work to do there. Very happy, Yeon gets on the bus with his friends, excited to see his family soon. Sun walks back to the shelter while the bus leaves, but he suddenly stops and, with panic, turns around to shout for them to stop. However, it's too late as the bus is violently attacked and destroyed. In the face of the catastrophic scene, Sun does nothing but look with hatred and anger at the strange ship in the sky. After the strange ship attacks the bus, those who are inside begin to exit to see what is happening. Everything is very confusing for many. No one understands what is going on, but they soon begin to evacuate the bus and assist the injured. But out of nowhere, an energy impacts Yeon's friends. Terrified, he sees Rin and Kim lying on the ground. But he is not alone as Sup is also impacted by this weapon. Dying, he apologizes for not helping him with the bullies at school, regretting not being a good friend to him. The protagonist is devastated and unable to move due to the difficult situation. It seems that the end of all of this has arrived. Meanwhile, Sun begins to analyze the ship, concluding that it is a sentinel, although he has not seen it before, so he thinks they could be monsters of the type that took his sister. Sun immediately creates an attack plan, jumping into the sky, propelled by the door of a car held by Mr. Park. He launches his first attack on the ship. After a moment, a mercenary emerges from it and positions himself right in front of him, leaving Sun surprised. In the midst of this, the mercenary asks if he is the one who has destroyed the dozens of mercenaries they have sent before. But Sun just wants to know if they have his sister. Then the mercenary undoubtedly understands that he is the target, as he has killed so many of them before, and attacks him immediately, but Sun quickly recovers from the mercenary's blow. At that moment, the mercenary is notified to return to the ship due to the deficit in his immune system. But the mercenary really wants to fight and begins to challenge Sun, since if he was chosen by the E, it is for a reason. But just at that moment Yeon appears. This triggers a danger alert in the location where the E observers are, but they cannot immediately assist to see what happens. So they decide to send a symphono first. Meanwhile, our protagonist's companion is quite weakened, while the mercenary tries to suffocate him. They keep calling the mercenary from the ship, and even another enemy comes down from it to convince him to return to the ship. But he doesn't want to. He assures that he can eliminate the boys. At that moment, the protagonist attacks, to gain time and allow Sun to recover. But the second mercenary gets a little annoyed with his companion and reminds him that their mission is to eliminate the enemy before they achieve their full awakening. But a battle begins, in which Sun joins as soon as he recovers, and it is not long before Yeon and him take down the first enemy. Almost instantly, a kind of message from the E-Observer appears. Sun immediately starts to complain to him, as he only wants to find his sister, asking how much longer he will have to do this. Their sentinel responds that they are very surprised because his awakening has been very fast, and that only for that reason, the mercenaries will always be after them. He also explains a little about the mercenaries and reminds them that the E is very surprised by how they have defeated everyone without their help, nor that of Symphono or Lapo. Yeon lets him know that he does not understand what Lapo is, so the E-Observer responds that Lapo is a union of forces with Symphono, in which an increase in power has been experienced never seen before, and that they only know about Lapo in theory because they have not had the opportunity to witness it. They also let him know that Symphono has just arrived and that they will arrive later. Meanwhile, the second mercenary is still trying to convince the first one to retreat because they are starting to feel the symptoms of staying outside the ship for so long. When the mercenaries are about to attack again, Symphono arrives to counterattack. The enemy, for some reason, cannot destroy Symphono, so they begin to devise a plan to limit his strength, as they know it is only temporary. Meanwhile, Sun tries to gain more strength and use Lapo since Symphono is there, so a new battle against the mercenaries begins. However, Symphono warns him that achieving unification to reach Lapo is not easy, and he does not agree with what Sun is doing. He suggests that Sun finds a safe place, but Sun ignores the advice and continues the battle, even though he cannot defeat the mercenaries. Suddenly, a sniper from afar hits the mercenaries' breathing equipment, limiting their ability to fight. Finally, the protagonist achieves unification and begins to use Lapo in an unstable manner. Meanwhile, the sniper launches a missile at the location, but it does not affect the mercenaries. Instead, it falls on the bus where the refugees are taking shelter. Yeon was also there, and upon seeing the condition of everyone, he asks the E for help as they are all badly injured. However, they respond that they cannot help because the damage is severe, and they are not like him. The only option is to use a little of Symphono's strength to regain energy and escape. The protagonist refuses to leave his friends behind. The battle continues, and the mercenaries still have a mission to destroy them. The boys put up a good fight, but it is not enough to defeat them. After the protagonist understands what is happening with his friends, he also invokes fusion with Symphono to reach Lapo, which he easily achieves. They join the battle to defeat their enemies. During the battle, the E-observers arrive but do not want to get involved. However, they discuss the observations they have made from afar and emphasize that one of the things they have seen in our protagonist is his ability to sacrifice for family. They remember how Yeon, upon waking up from a coma, started sacrificing himself to save people who had little to do with him. Therefore, while dealing with him, they decided to give him the E's point of view in his damaged eye. They continue to observe the battle between the boys and the mercenaries. In the battle, the protagonist and his companion continue to give it their all, but the mercenaries can also fuse with a sword, increasing their strength and continuing to be powerful enemies. Despite their thirst for revenge and greater strength, the attacks they provide are not enough to defeat the mercenaries once and for all. However, the mercenaries are well aware of the power of their enemies, and they are surprised by their skill and strength. The E-observers continue to watch from afar, trying to decipher what it is that humans have that they do not. They even talk about how Yeon, while unconscious, spoke to them, asking to be saved because he wanted to live, and that was decisive in deciding to observe him, since despite his unconscious state, he was a strong and persevering human, making him a worthy object of study. In the midst of all this talk, a very particular confession arises, and that is that in the middle of all this, they notice that someone else also reached their awakening, but at that moment they were in a state of exhaustion, due to the missile explosion, and that's when Ravashevsky appears on the scene, heading straight into battle to attack one of the mercenaries with great fury. The dog had also previously joined the battle, but quickly retreated, which makes us think that they might be referring to the dog. In the midst of Robashevsky's attacks, Yeon orders him to stop and go protect the others so that the mercenaries don't get any closer. The battle continues, and just as the protagonist is about to kill one of the mercenaries, his companion appears asking for a moment to see if he could confess where his sister was, but the mercenary only mocks him. In the end, this only gives him time to quickly escape to the ship. But as they are being absorbed, one of them lets them know that they will meet again soon. As the mercenaries leave, they begin to search for help to save as many of the wounded as possible. A helicopter arrives to transport all the wounded and give them the necessary care. Throughout this time, the protagonist cannot stop questioning himself, blaming himself without fully understanding what is happening. Once again, he has failed his friends, and it's all because problems always seem to follow him. Sun is reading a book in a nearby place when an E-observer appears out of nowhere with information for him and Yeon, so they all get together. However, the protagonist starts to complain that he feels that everything bad that happens is his fault when it's actually the fault of the mercenaries and those behind them. Then, Jae, the sniper who had helped them from afar in the battle a couple of times, appears among them. Here we find out that the observer also has a name, Hair Jar. Jae asks the observer to finally tell the boys everything that is happening and not keep the story of the alien invasion a secret any longer. On the other hand, some kids in the shelter are escaping, saying that if they are injured, it's because they followed Yeon and they want to take their own path to reach a separate shelter. All of this is happening while the observers, the protagonist, and Sun are gathered talking, and it's here where the entire story takes a total turn. Hair reveals that they come from the future and that E and Pyrrha are the only two systems that exist, designed by humans, and that the human race disappeared due to different reasons such as wars and the depletion of natural resources. 1,000 years after the extinction of humans, the systems turned on and began searching for the cause, as they were created to preserve and help them in their progress. The systems started to explore the state of the Earth at that time and took years to collect information, genetic material, and resources to create a new generation of humans with stronger bodies and more control of their emotions, as those were the main reasons for their extinction. But amidst all this, the two systems couldn't come to an agreement on what qualities were necessary for the new humans, so each decided to create their own version of them. The first ones were created by the Pyrrha system. They were superhumans, strong and emotionally stable, but despite thriving for centuries, they were gradually destroyed. E's version was much closer to the original design of humans, but with more emotional stability, and it is currently in use, so they are a future version in the image and likeness of the extinct humans. The protagonist can't believe what the observers have told them, as it's unbelievable to him that they have traveled through time. And the story is totally ridiculous, but the observers tell them they can't help them anymore if they don't believe the information they're giving them, and if they don't consider all that they have experienced as sufficient evidence. Faced with all this, Yeon and Sun reject everything, saying they didn't ask for any of this, and they just want to go back to their family, but all of this is a disaster. On the other hand, the mercenaries are also gathered, discussing what to do, as they have some important information about humans. but one of them insists on going back to finish the job, as they consider that they have evolved very rapidly by force, so they want to preserve those genes for the Pura system and ask permission to return, but this time accompanied by an infectious agent. Meanwhile, Yoon no longer wants to get involved in anything, but the observers are still keeping an eye on him to understand more. Soon after, we see the protagonist in the shelter when suddenly his family arrives, which makes him very happy, even meeting his new sister Jinyeon. He is fully enjoying the visit of his mother, sister, and uncle, talking about where she is, as his father is in charge of the main shelter, and is also waiting for him. So the mother proposes that they all go together, but he doesn't want to, as he fears putting his family in danger. Shortly after, Yoon sees that the leader is out of his bed, although he should be lying down as he is very weak and injured. His master tells him that he shouldn't worry about him or his friends anymore, that many have already left, and that he should return to his family, that what is happening in the world now is not his fault, and that he should stop thinking that he is the center of the problems. When suddenly Pura's ships appear again, the boys try to keep them away from the shelter, so they ride on a motorcycle to another area, where they can't harm anyone if the mercenaries attack. As they move away from the shelter, the ship attacks them, as the mercenaries already know they are trying to get as far away as possible to protect the other people. Meanwhile, two symphonos are on their way to help in the battle, which has already begun, and the boys continue with their previous fusion to fight hard. Sun remembers that they have her sister, so she launches a fierce attack and manages to land an incredible blow. When the symphonos arrive, the mercenaries decide to use their secret weapon, which is infectious agents, but these agents come in human form, so when they launch the first one, the boys go on the attack, although they still don't know how this new species works. But when they are about to strike the new carrier of the infectious agent, Sun discovers that it is her sister. In the face of this, the boys stop, but are attacked by the sister. Both do not understand what is happening and avoid fighting against her. As this is happening, the mercenaries announce that the mission is completed, while Sun tries to talk to her sister, not understanding what is going on. Then, the mercenaries take advantage of this moment of great weakness to attack, but Sun goes straight to the attack, and when she lands a blow, she asks them what they have done to her sister. At that moment, the mercenary responds that it is his fault that she is like this. Since he was chosen as an object of observation by the E, they searched for his identical gene to use it against him. While this is happening, the boys are attacked by the mercenary until they are cornered. But at this moment, the observer Hare appears using his symphono to hold back the attack. He also tells them that they have already awakened, that they have a lot of power, and that they should run. But everyone continues the battle as one of the mercenaries starts to speak, saying that their mission was not to kill them and that they had already achieved what they wanted, obtaining the protagonist's identical gene, which was well protected, but they still managed to get it and it could be much stronger than him. Yoon immediately understands that he is talking about his little sister, so he attacks them furiously, but is stopped by a force field while he slowly sees how they move away and all his hopes are lost. In the end, the entire place was destroyed and the Pira did not return to Earth. Pira's plans were to disrupt E's plans by stealing the identical genes of the awakened ones. Sun still wanted to rescue his sister, although he did not understand what they had done to her. But he still did not feel powerful enough to do it, and he also had to wait for them to return to Earth because for now, they had no way of finding them. For several months, our protagonist wandered in search of answers or for the Pira to return, but it never happened. After some time, we see Ravashevsky, Yoon, and Sun meet. His friend tells him that the mercenaries' troops have returned and asks the protagonist what he is going to do. But he corrects him and answers that they will kill them all together. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. If you've made it to this part of the video, let me tell you that you've been one of the few people to make it here, so comment the word survive in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.